In 2024, the Vatican raises 500 million people from the grave to establish a new civilization into which only the pious would be accepted. Stanley, Audrey and their son Nicholas live in love and peace. One day, on his way home after a baseball game when he and his son had a terrific time, Stan phones his wife. The wife objects to the youngster being in the front seat, and Nick unwittingly confesses that his father has been drinking. They dispute as Stanley's automobile collides with an incoming truck. Audrey screams in agony. Watching her husband's car roll over on the road later, her husband calls from the hospital and invites her to come and talk to him, but the woman is adamant their son died because of his fault. They have nothing to talk about. The woman hangs up, but the bishop calls, immediately connecting the woman with the cardinal ready to help Audrey in her grave. He promises a miracle. The woman goes to the church and the card channel brings out a live Nick Andre, beside herself that the church has discovered how to resuscitate the dead, but the priests refuse to do so. Describe how they do it. The only requirement for people desiring to be resurrected is that they be Christians. Photos of Nick are all over the news sources. There are continuous discussions regarding the naturalness of death and the ethics of the church's behavior. The marriage of Stanley and Audrey has been annulled, which has piqued the curiosity of reporters. A business has emerged based on the exportation of the deceased from Eastern countries. After crossing the border, the body undergoes a posthumous baptism, after which it is resurrected. However, in order to be resurrected, people are forced to hand over all of their digital data to church authorities, who refuse to limit the number of resurrected. Online churches are gaining popularity, with parishioners wearing virtual reality glasses, and one of these churches is preached by Stanley, who has accepted the new realities and calls on people to understand and accept resurrection, but not as immortality, but as a second chance. After finishing his speech, the man calls his son and ex-wife. Nick begs his father to come in the Easter celebration, but the mother is opposed to their connection. Andre hangs up, then Stanley receives a call from Collins, who has been resurrected, over Skype 2 months ago and is now unemployed. Stanley assures him that he will solve his problem, but the man responds strangely, implying that the father does not understand what is going on. In the morning, Stan is awakened by a call from the bishop, who informs him that Collins has pushed 17 of his colleagues off the skyscraper's ledge, forcing the police to shoot him down. The bishop connects Stanley with FBI agent Ortiz and asks for all possible assistance, and Stanley must temporarily stop preaching. Stan switches on the television. The cardinal is answering journalists' questions who are concerned that the resurrected will see themselves as omnipotent. After all, people seem to have a pass to commit evil because their victims will be resurrected anyway. The cardinal recalls the commandments: those who have killed will not be able to resurrect, and this should deter people from evil deeds. At that moment, Agent Orange calls, who works in the department dealing with the resurrected, and asks to send people are dissatisfied with this replacement, believing that the departure is related to Collins' act. Disgusted, the father consumes alcohol and writes to his ex-wife, wishing to talk to his son, but she replies that the boy just had a conversation with cancer patients and is very tired, and the bishop has forbidden Nick from communicating with his father, which provokes the man. That the resurrected are no longer persons, and everything that is happening to them is a government and church plot, and that if they hadn't revived one for whom a family mourned, 17 families would not be suffering today, and that the FBI is doing all possible to keep this case quiet. Stanley continues scrolling through the news feed and is shocked by accounts of mass atrocities perpetrated by the revived all over the world, and all of them are killed by police. Since there are no other options to stop them. Stanley is aware that Collins and all the other murderers were granted permission to resurrect based on the decision of the so-called cherubs who have the authority to judge people's souls. And he discovers a girl named Switch who was responsible for Collins, but she simply signed the papers without investigating the case, as do all the others. Stanley claims that in such circumstances, not only cherubs but even priests are implicated, and that he was unable to get information about his colleague, Father Flynn, who was managing another killer's case. Switch offers to assist and hunt for information about Father Flynn. Soon after, she sends a message with contact information for ex-priests and asks Stanley to be cautious. Stanley examines the data and discovers that the revived under the priest's care have expanded the mass executions of those around them everywhere. Stanley calls the bishop and tells him that Collins is not the first to begin killing, but the bishop disagrees, saying that these are just people who broke down for natural reasons such as mental illness, jealousy, and so on, and he forbids Stanley from asking unnecessary questions. The man tries to reach at least one priest who was dismissed after his charge had a breakdown, but no one answers, and only the next day does a call from Father arrive. Flynn, who is surprised by Stanley's ignorance, takes a gun and shoots himself because no one listens to him and time is running out to stop the warriors who are flooding the world. Stanley does not understand what the other is talking about, and Father Flynn takes a gun and shoots himself. Stanley phones Switch, who tells him to inform the police, but he will have to explain who led him to Flynn. After persuading, Stanley asks the girl to copy the deceased's computer's hard drive and discover what worried him so much. She does this and asks for some time to review the data, and Stan orders alcohol again. In the morning there is a call, but Switch hasn't found anything suspicious, and that's very good. There's nothing to worry about. She understands why she's so concerned about this topic as he is Nick's father, but that's no reason to see a conspiracy in everything. The bishop is delighted with his mood and informs him that Stanley has been permitted to return to work, and that Collins had a criminal background that he managed to conceal from the cherub. Stanley gleefully interacts with his charges, one of whom has made a friend and is delighted, but the second of whom Stanley sees a blooded guy and his dead family on the screen and says that he did this so that his loved ones might witness what he saw, and he's only getting started. Stanley contacts the police, and the agent urges him to tell him everything, even his suspicion of the church. The agent encourages him to stay put and not speak to anyone. The man tries to contact Switch, but she is out of range. He dials his son's number and asks him to call his mother, but she is seeing off the bishop, who has been visiting them quite frequently lately. The man returns to the news channel and learns that his charge was killed after they were unable to neutralize him. At that time, he receives a call from Switch, but as soon as he answers, a guy in black strikes him from behind. The girl witnesses everything and contacts the police. In the scuffle, Stanley snatches a bottle, breaks it, and accidentally cuts the agent's throat while he wrestles with the killer and takes off his mask. Switch is frightened by what is occurring. Does it indicate that the church and the FBI are working together? Suddenly, there is a siren in the distance, and Switch tells the guy to go since the cops have started murdering more frequently without determining the issue. Stanley seeks refuge at an internet cafe and makes contact with the Switch. The girl states that Agent Ortiz was slain 3 years ago and subsequently revived. She was also the one who announced that the resurrected killers had a criminal background, but this is not true. Switch enters Orchist's computer and discovers all the cases. All of the revived visited the same forum in the dark net. Warriors of Enlightenment. The two of them access the forum and read calls to start some action. The warriors have been waiting for a long time, but the moment has come for the mission to be revealed. But there are traitors. If they had discovered the crusade would have fallen. Stanley is horrified. This is a real cult below. One of the warriors worries that he will be arrested after saving souls, but the second one reassures him that when the righteous see what they have seen they will be grateful. Another warrior doesn't have a family and intends to save souls on the street. Stanley understands the warriors are discussing mass murders, and the warriors easily hack into personal networks, must literally monitor everyone. For once the information is out, the church will be obliged to revive only the virtuous. There are just 4 hours till the ceremony. Stanley realizes it's Easter in 4 hours. It's comforting that Nick's name isn't on the site, but he has to warn Audrey and cancel the holiday, and then Switch posts on the forum as Ortiz warns that the church has learned of the warriors' plans, so the action must be cancelled, but she is immediately refuted. The agent is dead, and the girl has to come up with the fact that she gave her password to warn the warriors track Stanley's location. Switch and Hara begs her father to save himself. Her IPS encrypted, and it's not easy to find her, so she will try to warn as many people as possible. Stanley runs from the cafe, but he's being pursued by the police as well. The man manages to escape and steal a phone which he uses to call Switch. The girl claims she is downloading evidence to transmit to the police, while Stanley attempts to get into his ex-wife's residence, but the cops are waiting for him. There, the girl sends a false message, after which the detectives depart to the address she provided, and Stanley goes inside where his family is taking communion in a virtual church. He pulls out his son and tries to tell him everything, but Nick is completely immersed in the mystery, and the rest, hearing Stanley's voice, remove their glasses. Audrey is shocked that the cops are hunting for him and that he has started drinking again. The lady kicks in the amount of the home without listening to the warnings. At this time Switch calls she submitted the data and expects that the police will begin work as soon as possible, but then shots are heard outside the door and one of the warriors has begun to carry out the plan. The girl hides while the cops try to stop Stan. He runs through the city, which is in the middle of a real war. There's fire, shooting and killings everywhere. The man gets wounded and hides behind the car, asking the girl to stay quiet so they don't find her, but a shot rings out and Switch's chest is soaked in red, and then a call from his son comes to Stanley's phone. Nick wishes his father a happy Easter and expresses his joy for those who will soon return to Earth. Again, Stanley is shocked because his son is a warrior who killed everyone. The man tries to get up to find his son but falls and dies as his son convinces him that all of these people have been given a second chance and that the father will also become righteous, and Nick is looking forward to their meeting at the Resurrection Center after the credits. Although the actual number of victims is unknown, it is estimated to approach 500,000 individuals, according to television video. The Vatican has announced the inauguration of 7 new resurrection centers. However, based on the publicly available biographical data, it is uncertain who will be qualified for resurrection. The public is objecting against formalism, requesting that the system be simplified. Stanley Martin is accused of murdering his entire family because he was the leader of the Warriors of Enlightenment sect. Nicholas was unharmed and taken to the Vatican. Many people are protesting against the concept of resurrection and don't want the church to control people's lives, but the cardinal insists that not all the resurrected were killers, and the church refuses to reveal the essence of the miracle. Although it has always accepted responsibility for sinners, it is worth highlighting its format, the so-called life screen, in which the audience follows the characters through computer screens, cell phones, and applications. This is pretty odd, and it may not appeal to everyone.